Well, hello everyone out there in our virtual community. I am Michelle. If you have joined us before, you know who I am. If this is your first time joining us, welcome to this exciting webinar. Like I said, my name is Michelle. I'm the Outreach Event Coordinator here at Pasadena Humane, and it is my job to put things on like this for you to go out and educate everyone. Today we're going to be talking about backyard birds, and I am joined by Taylor Paez. Taylor, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm coming live from a construction site at my job, so if you hear some noises, it's probably construction and not birds, unfortunately, and that's why I look like this.
I say, you know, like the orange safety vest, we got to remember safety first.
Safety first, absolutely. Teamwork second, safety first.
That's right. So Taylor is the treasurer at the Pasadena Audubon Society, and she is also a field ornithologist with Hannah Resources. So can you tell me a little bit about what that is? So I can figure out the treasurer part.
Yeah, treasurer, that's a little bit more self-explanatory. A field ornithologist means I'm a bird biologist. So I'm out in the field most of the time during nesting bird season, looking for nesting birds, especially on construction sites, and essentially making sure that construction is in compliance with federal rules and regulations protecting birds. So that's what I do. And then I go look at
a pretty cool job.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm outside all the time, so.
Yeah, and especially if you love birds.
Yes, yeah, it's a good place to be.
All right, so before I let you take the reins and get started, I'm going to go over some webinar reminders for those of us that are joining us for the very first time. So I'm going to go ahead and show my screen to everyone. All right, so for those of you that are brand new with us today, these are just a few reminders, some general housekeeping. This is an audio visual presentation, so even though you can see and hear us, we cannot see nor hear you. With that in mind, please use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. And as time permits, I will go ahead and ask those questions of Taylor. Usually we wait till the end of the presentation to ask these questions because they may be answered somewhere along the lines. Okay. I do want to invite you to some of our upcoming events. On January 28th, we're going to be doing Daga with our own Alyssa Standalin, and you can register for this event on Eventbrite. It's a nice session into the new year, paired yoga with your animals. Doesn't have to specifically be your dog. Next month, we are going to be featuring Dr. James Spies of the Crescenta Kenyatta Pet Hospital as we talk about pet dental health and why it's important. If for any reason you lose connection, you've got to get up and leave, this webinar is being recorded and will be sent to you tomorrow afternoon. And without further ado, go ahead and take it away, Taylor.
Sure thing. Okay, so I have been made the presenter. I am going to share my screen soon. Okie dokie. All right. So, that's my whole face. Sorry, guys. Are we back? There we go. Okay. So, welcome everybody. My name is Taylor. I will be talking a little bit today about backyard birding, finding birds in your neighborhood and beyond your neighborhood. I know a lot of people have been spending time at home and maybe you've had more chances to see birds and maybe you're curious about how to learn more, and you are in the right place for that.
Taylor, we can't see your screen.
No.
There we go.
All right, I got it. So backyard birding and beyond, that's me. Like I said, my name is Taylor. I'm a field ornithologist. I have spent most of my life learning about birds. I have been birding for about 12 years, and even though it may look like I'm 12 years old in that picture, that is only about half of my life. I didn't start out birding, right out of childhood. I actually stumbled upon birding when I was in college. So a little bit of background. My first year of college was at Cal State LA, and I was sitting on campus, sitting outside in the courtyard. I was probably not studying as hard as I should have, and I was looking around and I saw this flock of birds, and I was really amazed by this flock. They were these little birds. They were kind of high up in the tree, but I could make out that they had brown pointy heads and that they had these black masks on like Zorro, and they were making this really high-pitched noise. And I thought, oh my goodness, that must be animals that escaped from the zoo or maybe somebody's pets. I was just amazed. These birds were so beautiful, and there were so many of them. And I went home that evening. I went on Google, and I think I typed in something like brown birds, pointy head, black mask, and I got a picture that looked like this. And I found out that these birds were called cedar waxwings. And I also learned that these birds are native to here. So they exist in Southern California. They're here especially in the winter in large numbers. If there is a large ruckus up in a tree, and you hear this really high-pitched, kind of like a really squeaky kind of wheelbarrow kind of noise, that's probably cedar waxwings. And they do this thing, mated pairs will pass food back and forth to each other until one of them eats it. Sort of like a courtship, sort of like dating, just like in this picture. But anyway, so I found out what they were, and then I went and I bought a bird book, and then it all went downhill from there. I fell in love with birds. I was so amazed by them that I just couldn't believe that there was this gorgeous natural creature and all these gorgeous animals that have existed around me my whole life, and I had no idea until I just looked up. And so cedar waxwings are what is called in the birding community, or bird watching, sometimes we call it birding. Cedar waxwings are, to me, they are my spark bird, which is the bird that got me into birding. And some of you may have a spark bird already. You've already seen a bird that made you say, wow, I really need to look at more birds. Or maybe you don't have one quite yet, but hopefully we can get you some tips so you can go and get a spark bird yourself. I hope to turn you guys all into birding after this. So a really good question, where to start? So where are birds? If you live in a big city, it might be hard to believe that they are in fact everywhere. Birds are everywhere. There are even birds on this construction site where there are no trees where I'm at right now. Birds are everywhere. And you really just have to train yourself to stop, look, and listen to see birds. A lot of the time they're right under our noses and we have no idea until we really take the time to look around and inspect our environment. And usually you can find a bird. And if you are a local and you live anywhere near the Los Angeles County Arboretum, you don't have to look very hard or listen very hard to see an Indian peafowl, which have been introduced, and they are very loud and they are obviously very bright. Other birds are a little bit more subtle. but they are all around us. So one way, since a lot of us are staying home a lot more, to get birds, to find birds, or to bring them to you. One of my favorite ways to trick birds into getting closer to me is by feeding them. And obviously we want to feed them healthy things. And to get a feeder, you don't have to have, fancy top of the line squirrel proof, mega feeder. You can make a feeder from, like in the top left corner, a bottle and some wooden spoons. You can use a milk carton. You can use all sorts of things and make your own DIY bird feeder. And you can fill it with seed. You can buy seed at the store or Amazon. And it attracts a whole variety of birds. Some birds are more specialized and typically go after fruits. On the right-hand side, the top right corner, that is a Baltimore Oriole. We don't have Baltimore Orioles here. We do have two different kinds of Orioles in Southern California, the Bullock's Oriole and the Hooded Oriole, but the males in spring are just as bright and gorgeous. So we first start getting Orioles in the spring here as they come up from South America, and they love oranges. And I don't know if they're attracted to the bright color, but they are certainly attracted to the sweet juice. So you don't even have to buy a fancy hook or a specialized orange hook. You can just put some oranges out on a bird feeder and they will probably find it. You can also go to the store. There's probably recipes online to make your own suet. Certain birds love suet. On the bottom left, that is a blue tit that is from Europe. We don't have those here, unfortunately. They are relatives of the chickadee, but he is enjoying some suet. And then the bottom right is a cardinal enjoying some grapes. So the more diverse offerings you have at your bird buffet, the more diverse visitors you'll have. So mix it up and see what you can get to come to your yard. At my apartment, I live in an apartment, and so you don't really have to have a house or a yard to have a bird feeder. So at my apartment, we have a hummingbird feeder, and typically you won't see them like this, all lined up neatly and sharing. Typically you'll see them chasing each other off. We have one very aggressive Allen's hummingbird. He's a male and he's very beautiful. The males get this very gorgeous coloring on them. And he will fight anyone. He will fight anyone, any hummingbird. He will fight birds 3 times as big as he is. That is his feeder and no one can touch it. So if you want your own little tyrant, you can get one. You don't have to go to the store and get specialized hummingbird food. You can make it yourself, and it's really easy. 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. Our little hummingbird feeder, we usually do a 1/4 cup of sugar to a full cup of water. You bring it to a boil, let it cool, and then put it in your feeder, and you have some great hummingbird fuel, and it will provide you hours and hours of entertainment watching these little guys. Another way to bring the birds to you, in a really great way to help your local environment, is to plant a native plant garden. If you plant a native plant garden, it not only benefits birds, it benefits the insects. And so obviously you don't want to have a native plant garden with plants, if you're living in Southern California, plants native to Italy or Brazil. You want California native plants, so plant plants that are specific to your region. It's good because over hundreds of thousands, millions of years, these plants have evolved with along with insects that come to specialize feeding on them, and then these insects populations they do better, and those insects feed the birds. So you're really creating this whole mini ecosystem in your yard when you plant native plants. And you will get birds that you couldn't otherwise get to come to a feeder. In Southern California, we have sparrows and tokis that can be quite shy, and they love native plant gardens. They will just hang out underneath the bushes, and they will scratch, and you can see them there. Like I said, I don't have a full yard, but we do have lots of native plants in containers. So if you really want, you can get yourself a native plant garden as well. And obviously, if we are inviting guests to our home, we want to make sure that it's safe for them. Cats are one of the #1 killers of birds. So if you're going to have a feeder, I recommend keeping your kitty indoors. Even the laziest cats will eventually catch a bird, and it's not really good for anyone. So keep your kitties indoors. You also want to make sure that birds aren't flying into your windows. It can be quite shocking when it happens, but sometimes birds will be flying by the window and they see the reflection of the sky and they think it's more sky, and they will just fly right into it. Sometimes it will just knock them out. They'll be a little bit stunned, and sometimes it will just kill them immediately. To prevent that, you can use paper cutouts or window clings to break up that reflection, so that when they look at your window, they don't see just the sky. They know that it's a solid object there, and they don't want to fly towards it. And then you also want to keep your feeders clean. Hummingbird feeders can get ants and mold, and other feeders can start to look nasty after a while. So if it's looking kind of dirty, it's probably time to clean your feeders. You don't want anybody getting sick or spreading disease, and you can keep everyone happy and healthy. So now that we have brought the birds to us, we have to learn how to see what we're looking at. And so it takes a while, and it can be kind of tricky to know exactly what you're looking at on a bird. So I just recommend sitting down and just looking, studying, and observing. So some of the things you want to know when trying to identify a bird, the first thing that really pops out to us is the colors of the bird. So what colors are you seeing? What is the main color? Are there multiple colors, different shades? Is the color limited to the head, to the wing? Those kinds of questions. We do want to know what size it is. Is it hummingbird sized? Is it condor sized? Size can be a little bit tricky, especially as you get further along in bird identification, because smaller birds come in so many different sizes and it's hard to communicate sometimes. But just try to get a general feel. Is it football sized? Is it airplane sized? Behavior is also another way that we can use, another tool we can use to identify birds. Some flycatchers you can tell apart, not because of their plumage or their feathers. You can tell them apart by the way that they bob their tail. Some of them bob, one species bobs up, the other one bobs down, and that's tricky for really similar looking species, but something to help tell them apart. Another behavior to look at is it moving quickly? Is it stopping every 5 seconds? Is it kind of hanging around, being cautious? Here in Southern California, we have 2 birds that look similar in the winter, the ruby-crowned kinglet and the Hutton's vireo. And one way to tell them apart is that the ruby-crowned kinglet pretty much never stops moving, always constantly jumping from branch to branch, checking under leaves, whereas the Hutton's vireo will take its time, look at a leaf, see if it's gonna eat that bug, and it's a good way, kind of, if you can't see the very fine details, a good way to narrow down what you're looking at. And
so Taylor, I'm going to launch our first poll question.
go for it.
Right, it's going to go up on your screen. So birds, oh, that was the wrong question.
Was it?
Oh no.
Oh, there we go. Birds are only found in pristine natural environments.
So, and that is false because I closed the poll too early.
Oh, okay, well, it is false. So it's not a joke. It was the habitat at a marsh or a Walmart parking lot. It can be at a Walmart parking lot. If you ever go, it doesn't have to be Walmart specifically, but a lot of parking lots will have in Southern California Brewer's blackbirds, and they're the little birds, little blackbirds that have a yellow eye, and they're usually kind of hopping around, looking around your car. And that's a pretty good indicator. If you said, oh, I saw a blackbird as I was leaving Walmart the other day, I'd say, you know, it was probably a Brewer's blackbird. If you, there are certain kinds of grebes, which are water birds. Certain species only you will typically find in the water, whereas other birds, other species you will find in fresh water. So habitat is another thing to look at when you're trying to narrow down what bird you're seeing. Oh, there we go. So we're going to practice a little bit. So if someone told you, I saw a bird with a black head and an orange belly and no other information, would you be able to decide which one that, did they see an American robin or did they see a Baltimore Oriole? With a little bit more information, we could figure it out. So if you said I saw a bird with a black head and an orange belly in Southern California in the winter, I would say that is more than likely a robin. If you said I saw that same bird with a black head, orange belly, but I saw it on the East Coast in the spring, that would not be enough information because they both exist over there in the spring. So if you said I saw a bird with a black head, orange belly, and a gray beak, that might be able to help you decide which bird it was. It would be the Baltimore Oriole. And so these really kind of subtle differences can help us determine which bird we saw. So practice looking at the bird that you're seeing and other birds that might look similar and seeing what differences there are. So like the robin has a yellow bill and white around the eye, whereas the Baltimore Oriole doesn't have any white around the eye and has a kind of metallic dark bill. So that was good, that was fun. So to help you with bird identification, I recommend getting a field guide, and they can be as general or as specific as you like. There are field guides for counties, for states, for regions, for countries, and there's probably a global one as well. But you can get one to help you narrow down your search. And there seems to be an infinite number of field guides, and they can be arranged by evolutionary relationship. They can be arranged by all sorts of different ways. So whatever works for your brain. And there are 3 examples of different types of field guides here. When I first started out, I was using the Audubon field guide, and on the far right, and that one has pictures and it is sorted by color. And I think for me, I see color really stands out to me, so it worked to help me learn birds, because you might not be able to know what is a kingfisher right away, or what is a grosbeak, but you do know that it's blue, and that can help you figure out what it is that you saw. As you learn a little bit more, you can get more detailed field guides. I use currently the Sibley's Guide to Birds, and it's really great because I've learned to really enjoy illustrated guides, because it highlights some colors that you might not be able to get in a photograph, but that you would see in the field. And I love Sibley's illustrations in general. There's also Peterson's, so different style of illustration and different style of highlighting differences. And it's all personal preference, but if there is a field guide for you, it does exist. Oh, nope. So there should be a question.
There is. I am going to put it up on the screen. So birding is purely a visual activity. Is this true or false?
And nobody saw the last slide. I promise it was not there.
So, all right. I am going to close the poll in 3, 2, and 1. So Taylor, a majority of the audience said this is false.
All right, they are correct. Bird identification is not purely visual. A lot of it is done through sounds. The quote, 90% of birding is listening, is something I've heard a bunch of times, and I've heard it attributed to a bunch of different people. So I put Abraham Lincoln probably said this. Anyone could have said it. Doesn't make it any less true. A lot of birding is done just through listening. A lot of the times when I'm outside, I don't even see the bird. Especially during nesting season, they can be really good at hiding themselves. So a lot of the times you'll just hear them. And so it's really, really interesting. It's a lot of fun to be able to, and it's a cool party trick to be able to go outside and hear a bird and be able to tell what it is. When I teach kids about birds and bird songs, I tell them that birds are like Pokemon, in that Pokemon have like one specific sound that they make. They either say their name or some other sound. Birds may not always say their name. The black phoebe does say phoebe, but they typically have sounds that are specific to their species that help you identify what they are. And so there are a lot of other great tools to help you identify birds. There's this really great app called Merlin. You can download it on your phone, and it'll ask you some questions about the bird that you saw, sort of like what we went over. So the color of it, the size of it, was it on the ground, was it up in a tree, questions like that, and it will, and also your location, and it will provide a list of birds that you could have possibly seen. And I think it's a super amazing and helpful tool, especially when you're just starting out, because sometimes you'll have this field guide and you won't even know where to start. And so this helps you narrow it down and look at birds and be able to compare and contrast birds that look similar, and really great tool for learning birds. There are also plenty of online resources to help you learn about birds. All About Birds is by the Cornell Laboratory and has not only pictures and comparisons to similar looking species, but also life history. So how does it nest, how many eggs does it lay in a season, and all sorts of great information about our North American birds. Macaulay Library, also another great resource with photos and sounds. Xenocanto, that is specific for bird sounds, and you can pretty much type in any species around the world, or most species that there are recordings of, and it will provide you with recordings of that bird, as well as the location that the recording was taken and the date. So if you wanted to hear, say, a spotted owl, you can hear one that is in California. You can also hear what one sounds like in Mexico, and it's a really cool resource if you are learning about birds, learning about sounds, calls, and songs, and also if you're just curious. Birds sometimes have developed dialects or accents. The white-crowned sparrow is a bird that we have here, and there are multiple subspecies throughout its range, and I think all of them have specific, they all sing a similar song, but they all have a different sort of dialect or accent. So you can figure out if southern birds have a southern drawl. It's a really great tool. Also, Facebook groups. There are plenty of birds, plenty of groups that will help you identify birds. If you have a photo, sometimes even a really not so great photo, you can share it, and there will be people trying to help you solve that case. So we have brought the birds to us. We have learned how to identify them. And let's say you are tired of these backyard birds, you know them in and out. How are we going to find more birds? We can travel. We don't have to travel very far, especially during the pandemic. Probably don't want to. But there are lots of places where we can find birds in our neighborhood. One kind of obvious place or set of places to bird, parks are a great place to find birds. And they can be your local city park, a state park, a national park, any place where there is green trees, and maybe some water. Here I have this photo of the yellow-headed Amazon parrot in Pasadena. They are not native to here. And if you live in Pasadena or the surrounding area, you may have heard them. They tend to travel in large flocks and be very, very noisy. We have several species of non-native parrots that have taken up residence in Southern California. And there is a park, La Pintoresca Park in Pasadena is a great place to go see them roost. So right around sunset, you can go there, and quite reliably, they'll be flying in to roost, go to bed, and they're kind of always there. The story behind how they got here, I heard that it was there was a pet store that caught on fire, and the owner let all the parrots, all the animals go, so they wouldn't, so they could escape the fire. And they just happen to do really well here. And so now we have whole populations of parrots, and we have grown to love them in our own way. Some of these species are endangered in their native ranges due to the pet trade, so we're happy to have them here, or I'm happy to have them. Another place I like to bird, which might seem kind of morbid, but I really like birding cemeteries. You obviously want to be very respectful. If you see folks that are mourning, or if there's a funeral going on, you maybe don't want to bird in that area. You don't want to go running around pointing at trees. But cemeteries are usually very quiet, very peaceful. There's usually a lot of grass, which means a lot of water. Here in Southern California, a lot of our cemeteries have oak trees, and birds love oak trees. There's lots of insects and lots of food, acorns. So really great place to bird, and maybe one you haven't thought of before. So go check out your local cemetery. And this is a vermilion flycatcher I saw at the Oakdale Cemetery. This bird is typically, you wouldn't see them here in Southern California, but they're becoming more common. You usually see them in Arizona, but they go to cemeteries, and you can probably see one there too if you go. Another kind of uncommon place to bird, water treatment plants and spreading grounds. You only want to go if it is open to the public. You don't want to go barging into a sewage treatment plant, trespassing and getting a ticket. But there are plenty of spreading grounds that kind of double as recreation areas, and you can see lots of waterfowl, especially during the winter. This is a tundra swan, which is a rare visitor, and this was at the Rio Hondo spreading grounds January of last year, 2020. This was the first time I had ever seen this bird, and it happened to be at the Rio Hondo spreading grounds. And surrounding it was a bunch of those ducks that are right next to the bird's head. Another great place to bird, probably not in California. I imagine the rules are a little bit stricter here, but in Texas, you can go to dumps and you can see lots and lots and lots of birds. They love all the food waste that gets brought there. This particular dump in Brownsville, Texas is a very kind of famous or infamous birding spot. It is a place where you can semi-often see a rare bird called the Tamaulipas crow, which is common in Mexico and uncommon in the United States. So if you want to see it in the United States, a great place to hang out is at the dump. They will typically let you go in, and they just tell you to stay away from the heavy machinery and you're good. Obviously it doesn't smell great, and if you step in some trash juice, you will also not smell great, but you'll probably get to see a rare bird, and it will be totally worth it, from my opinion anyway.
All right, so now we know where we can see the birds. I'm going to put a poll up on and see if anybody knows when the best time to go birding is, or to look for songbirds in particular.
Yeah, this is a really good question.
So it looks like I'm going to close the poll now. Most of the audience, Taylor, said the morning, some said the evening.
Okay, yeah, great question. So for songbirds, the morning is one of the best times to go see them, right after or right around sunrise. That is typically the height of songbird activity. They are just waking up and they need to have breakfast because they are very tiny little birds. So a lot of birders are, forgive the pun, early birds, and myself included, but you don't have to be. Different groups of birds prefer different times of day. So if you wanted to see a bird that is only active or is more active at night, like the owl, you want to go at night so you can see them. Maybe not see them, but you can hear them a lot better than you could in the daytime. You want to be respectful, of course, of owls. They are very sensitive, so you don't want to go running into the forest with a crazy bright light shining into all the trees. But if you go for a night hike, you can often hear the hooting of great horned owls. Raptors. So raptors is a group of birds that are more commonly referred to as birds of prey. So like hawks, they like the afternoon because once the excuse me, the sun starts warming up the air, it creates these currents of air that are moving up, and these birds want to save energy, and they will just open up their wings and ride this current, ride the thermal up. So if you see a hawk up in the sky that just has its wings out and isn't flying, it's probably riding that air current, and so you can usually see hawks better in the afternoon. So the best time to go, from my perspective, is anytime, but best time for songbirds right after sunrise, raptors in the afternoon, and owls at night. So what kind of gear do you need?
All right, and I'm going to put that poll up on the screen. So to start birding, I need a spotting scope, binoculars, and a camera. Oh, this question, this statement here, Taylor, is really divided whether it is true or false.
It's a tricky one.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. So although a majority of people said that this is a false statement, some people did say that it was true. So what do we need to get started?
All you need is curiosity, your field guide, and plenty of patience, especially if you are bringing birds to you. If you can kind of get close to them through the use of a feeder. You don't always necessarily need your binoculars, and sometimes they are close enough that binoculars might not even work. So you don't always need binoculars. You don't need the fanciest camera. You don't need the fanciest spotting scope. Really, to start out, you just need a field guide, and that can be in the form of a friend to help you figure out what it is that you're looking at. Binoculars do help, especially if you're out in the field birding or at a park. Sometimes for birds that are really far away, you can get a spotting scope, which is like a bird telescope, sort of. For binoculars, birders typically use 8x42 magnification or 10x42. I tend to use 8 personally. The 10 is a little bit more magnified, but if you have unsteady hands like I do in the morning, my hands get really cold, or I have had too much coffee, the 8x42 is a better choice because it's a little bit steadier with that kind of zoomed out a little bit. So I like to keep track of what I've seen. A lot of people in the bird watching community are what is called listers. Some people really like to keep track of every bird that they've seen in a given county or a state, or a lot of people will ask you, what's your life list? How many species of bird have you seen in your entire life? Sometimes to sort of flex on other birders. But numbers are not important. What is important is your experience. I really like having a field notebook, so a paper journal, which I write down the birds that I've seen, where I saw them. You can practice sketching them. You don't have to even be a good drawer, but you can see the things that are helpful to you and make note of them, and keep track of the birds that you've seen that way. Another great way is eBird, which is a very popular online service that is also by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I might be wrong about that, but eBird, ebird.com will take you there, I believe, and it shows you all the birds that people have seen throughout the world. Actually, it's used internationally, and there is an app for it. You can put it on your phone, and you can type in or give an approximate location of where you are watching birds, and it will generate the most birds you're likely to see in that area. It will just show you the names of them, not pictures like the Merlin app, but then you can enter in how many individuals you saw of given species. And it also really helps scientists look at patterns of migration and population, because there's people all over the world entering this data. And it's a really wonderful tool to help you find more birds as well. It will show you local hotspots. It'll give you directions. You can see what other people have seen. So eBird is another really great tool, really useful tool. And so sometime in the future, I highly recommend going on a field trip with other people. I know, at least in Southern California, we can't do that right now. But I hope one day when it is safe to, that you all get an opportunity to bird with other people, because it's a true joy getting to share the world of birds and nature with other folks. And it's a really great way to learn things from other people. Some people have tips and tricks you might not have otherwise thought of, and it's a great way to meet friends. And you don't have to wait until the end of the pandemic to support an Audubon Society, and that is a shameless plug for the Pasadena Audubon Society. It's a great way to support education and conservation efforts. And also another great way to make friends, even if it is virtually. And I think that is it. That is all I have. Thank you guys so much for coming. So glad you guys could make it today. Back to you.
All right, so Taylor, I do have a few questions from our audience, if you wouldn't mind answering some.
I do not.
Okay, so what earlier in the presentation you mentioned getting like window clings. Mm-hmm. What is the objective of having it bird shaped?
People say that the birds will, the idea is that there's a flock of birds coming toward that bird, and so that bird's not going to fly towards that flock and potentially collide with that bird. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bird. It can be kind of anything to break up that reflection. And also birds are cool. So it's cool to have a bird.
No, I completely agree. I see, you know, where I live, I've seen, you know, flocks of geese that fly by, and I actually saw a peregrine falcon on, you know, my roof one time. So it was pretty cool.
Wow.
So is it necessary when bird watching for it to be quiet?
It's not necessary, but it is helpful. I have gone birding with like 30 kids at one time, and it's obviously not quiet then. If the birds, like if they're ducks and they're far away enough, they typically they feel safe and they won't run away. It is helpful, but not necessary. You can go to a busy park and you can probably find birds and not have to tell people to be quiet.
So are parrots and crows natural enemies?
I have never heard that.
Okay. Yeah. One of our audience members have said that they once saw a group of parrots and crows fighting over a bag of Cheetos.
I could see that. I could see that. Both those birds are very smart, both parrots and crows. So maybe they got into a little bit of a tussle. And
yeah, maybe. I can understand, you know, ruffling your feathers when getting those food sources.
Yeah, especially Cheetos. I'd fight for Cheetos.
Well, you and I won't have a fight at all. They're all yours. So what are your thoughts on creating nesting boxes for the birds in your backyard?
That's a great idea, and that is something I actually thought of last night. I was like, shoot, I should add that to the PowerPoint, but I didn't want to go over time. It's a great idea. You can find lots of resources online, depending on your area and whatever birds you're trying to attract. Some birds have very specific requirements and different, the holes have to be a certain shape. Other birds are less picky. In Monrovia, we've set up bluebird boxes that were made specifically for bluebirds, and they have attracted more than just bluebirds. Sometimes we get wrens and chickadees, so I recommend it as long as after the nesting season you clean out that box, because it could create home for bacteria and lice and things like that. And then you obviously don't want to disturb the birds while they're nesting, but it's really cool to see them grow up and leave the nest.
So that brings up a question that I have is there a certain period of time when it is nesting season?
So kind of nesting season officially ends around, I believe the date is August 31st or September 15th, depending on who you ask. But you can typically tell when a nest is no longer active just by kind of looking at it, especially if it's at your home and you see it every day and you don't see any more activity. You'll usually see birds going in and out of there because the babies have to be fed with some degree of frequency, so it'll be obvious when they're done.
All right, and with we're talking about birds and nests. Do they sleep?
Do birds sleep? Yep, yes. They sleep with both eyes closed. If you have chickens, some birds have this reflex where if you take a chicken's foot, don't want to lose the computer here. Foot's like this. If you push up like this, they'll grab onto it, and it's a reflex to keep them on the branch or on the roost, so that when they sleep, they don't let go and fall off. So it's just this muscle.
So yeah.
So practice.
So they're not, laying down with their head on a pillow.
No, they're sleeping like this.
Yeah. So I know last week we actually did a webinar for kids on wildlife and watercolor, and because it was National Bird Day, one of the animals that we drew was a woodpecker, and in that webinar I learned that woodpeckers have basically 4 toes, 2 facing forward and 2 facing backwards to help them hang on.
Yeah, some species of woodpeckers do have that, which is really, really neat.
All right, and so just a couple more questions, but I thought this one was very interesting. How do we distinguish between native birds and non-native birds?
Good question. So that's a really good question. If you wanted to look up a list, you could find a list. The American Ornithological Society publishes and releases a list every year that gets updated of the birds in the North American area. And so there's certain criteria. So some birds that were brought here, and so it's just kind of looking at historical records to see what was here in the past, because people have been recording what birds they have seen for a long time. The Audubon Society started because of bird counts over 100 years ago, and so every year these ornithologists get together, and there are some birds that have been introduced that they will kind of deem naturalized, and so there's a certain criteria. I believe it's a certain number of years, the population is self-sustaining, and there's currently no plan to get rid of these birds, and so they become countable. So if you go see them, it becomes a countable North American bird. But it's a good question, and it's also kind of up for debate depending on what scientist you ask.
Okay. What migratory birds might we see often in Southern California?
Migratory birds?
Yes.
So right now we have, in the winter, we have Audubon's yellow-rumped warbler. They are affectionately called butterbutts because they have this little speck of yellow on their rump. They are kind of everywhere right now. You just kind of have to look. There's also white-crowned sparrows here this time of year. You can probably hear them singing if you have a bush. What else do we have right now? In the spring, we get all sorts of great things. We get orioles, we get tanagers, we get warblers, we get vireos. So yeah, we have winter visitors and we have spring visitors. And there's a lot, and I can't think of them all right now, but hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah. One last question for you, Taylor. Are there any species of birds that are natural friends, or do they just kind of tolerate each other for the purposes of food?
That's a really good question. I can't think of off the top of my head any particular kind of symbiotic relationship. I'm sure it exists, but I read an article, it was a few months ago, about how small birds will tend to hang around together because they have learned what the other birds' alarm calls are. So if I am a woodpecker and I know the chickadee's alarm call and the chickadee is saying that there is a hawk nearby, then I know I need to get out of there. Hopefully the chickadee comes with me, but he doesn't. Well, so they kind of hang around in groups, so because it's safer.
Okay. This has all been some amazing information. I think, I'm inspired a little bit more to step outside and really take a listen and a look to some things that I can see around here, especially living down in the beach community.
Oh yeah. Oh, you've got tons of great birds. You just have to walk outside.
So thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us and educate our entire community. And I hope that you have a great day, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you guys. And thanks everyone for coming. Hope you have a great day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.